So Maryland and DC lost a case they filed trying to shut down 3 local Maryland gun shops, and the judge was not too happy with them. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Hey Wolverines, I am John Crump, and this is John Crump News, your home for the latest gun news. And this is definitely an interesting case. I'm curious to see what you guys think about it, so let me know down below. Maryland teamed up with the District of Columbia to sue 3 local Maryland gun shops for being a public nuisance. This type of lawsuit is popping up across the country, and this is a new tool in the anti-gun zealots tool bag. The 3 gun shops were Engaged Armament, United Gun Shops, and Atlantic Guns. The plaintiffs claimed that these 3 gun shops were a public nuisance because a man named Demetrius Minor purchased several guns from the shops. Minor was buying the guns to sell to prohibited people, and the plaintiffs claimed that the stores should have known that the man was an obvious shawl purchaser. Their words, not mine. The plaintiffs also said that the gun shops had reason to believe that Minor was purchasing the guns to resell on the black market. How did they know that the gun shops should have known that the guy was purchasing the guns to sell on the black market? Well, Maryland and DC never actually said what their reasoning were or how the gun shops should have known. Maybe they thought that the gun shop's employees were all psychics and could read people's minds. Not really sure, but they went with that anyway. Honestly, this case was doomed from the start. I think this is more of a SLAPP-like lawsuit. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. This lawsuit isn't exactly a SLAPP lawsuit, but it's close. In a SLAPP lawsuit, the lawsuit is filed to silence critics by trying to make them spend tons of money on lawsuits. This case isn't exactly that, but the plaintiffs were trying to cost the defendants tons of money to force them out of business. And to me, that's just crazy. They are legal shops and they should not be harassed by the state. The plaintiffs have unlimited taxpayer money and they just wanted to shut down these shops. The defendants moved to have the case dismissed by the court because the plaintiffs never stated a claim for which relief can be granted, and in order to file a lawsuit, you have to have a claim. All 3 gun stores denied having any knowledge that the man was a shawl purchaser and pointed out that the plaintiffs never presented any evidence whatsoever that they knew Minor was reselling the guns to prohibited buyers. The gun stores said they had no idea, and I believe them. I've talked to some of them, and I definitely do believe them. If there's no evidence that the gun store knew Mr. Minor was trafficking in guns, and there wasn't, then no relief can be granted to the plaintiffs. The judge highlighted that Minor passed a background check each and every time that he purchased a firearm, and he also held a Maryland handgun qualification license, which would lead the stores to believe that he was a lawful purchaser. The judge also noted that every time that Mr. Minor bought a handgun, approval was issued by the Maryland State Police. What that means is that MSP is just as culpable, if not more culpable, than the dealers themselves, since the state approved every sale at all 3 dealers, and the dealers really didn't talk to each other about this guy buying guns. So why didn't Maryland sue themselves? Inquiring minds really want to know. He also highlighted the man marked that he was the actual purchaser of the gun on the MSP Form 77R and the ATF Form 4473, which he signed both under oath. The only objective evidence that the plaintiffs had, and this is arguable that if it's actual evidence or not, was trace data from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The use of trace data in civil lawsuits is prohibited by federal law. So by Maryland and DC using the data, they were actually breaking the law, which the judge also noted. Because the plaintiffs broke the law by trying to use the trace data, the judge had no other choice but to throw out that evidence, meaning that the states had no evidence whatsoever. With the exclusion of the trace data, the state's case was doomed because Like I said, there was no other evidence. The judge said, critically in this case, the court will not consider allegations in the complaint or arguments concerning those allegations that are based on or derived from trace data. This data maintained by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives largely for law enforcement investigative purposes. Use of such data in a civil case is expressly barred by federal law, which provides, among other things, that trace data shall not be used, relied on, or disclosed in any manner, nor shall testimony or other evidence be permitted based on the data in civil actions in any state or federal court. The judge used the actual sales data of the guns to Minor to determine if any public nuisance really did exist. And flash forward, he didn't find any. So there's that. The plaintiffs admitted in the oral arguments that the gun shops didn't inform each other about the sale to Minor, meaning that there was no way that they could have known about each other's sales. The only people that knew that Minor was buying these guns from all these different gun shops was the state of Maryland. Yes, you heard me right. The MSP was aware of every single gun sale to the man. The judge was critical of the plaintiff's theory that somehow the gun stores should have known that the guns were being resold. Once again, there was zero evidence that the gun stores knew. The judge really didn't like the game that Maryland and DC were playing. He called them out for trying to use discovery to construct a case against the three gun stores. The judge wasn't down with that at all. The judge was unhappy with the plaintiff's apparent legal maneuvering and dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning that the case can never be refiled again. These gun shops are walking, which is great. But the gun stores still had to waste a lot of time and money to defend themselves. The only public nuisance is DC and Maryland and their underhanded techniques to try to put these gun shops out of business. But there's a way you can piss off Maryland and DC. I'm going to tell you about that right now. You can go ahead and join my locals at johncrump.locals.com or just subscribe to the channel. It's free and it really does help out. We will see more and more of these lawsuits pop up across the country because they are kind of working. The point of this version of lawfare is to cost the stores so much money that they cannot make any money by selling firearms. They are trying to make the business of operating a gun store so expensive that it isn't worth the time or effort. But we have to push back and we have to support these gun stores every single time one of these cases are filed, because I don't think these cases are going to be going away anytime soon, because these states have unlimited taxpayers' money to throw away on losing cases.